something that I tell a lot of people is to follow that excitement. Like you said, whether you're posting it, whether you're sharing it or not, keep following that excitement, because that is the whisper that I once, that is the whisper of like, this is what you need to do, follow the excitement. And at some point you'll get so lost in that, so lost in the flow and the excitement, that at some point you realize that you have a product that now you want to share it with the world. And that is what makes good art.
Hey guys, welcome back to Content, a podcast for local creatives. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited for this episode today with Miguel Hernandez, a super cool photographer based in Salt Lake City, and had a really cool conversation today. Make sure to check out his information in the bio. And also, if you like this content, please make sure to subscribe, as it helps build a community and motivates me to keep going. Thanks, guys. Cool. Well, we're back and we're welcoming Miguel Hernandez to the podcast today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was telling you before, but I'm super excited about this episode because this is the first time someone has reached out to me or filled out the survey to be on the podcast, which is exciting.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. This is really cool. This is my first podcast, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be good. I'm really excited too. And I kind of wanted to start today by me personally and letting the audience kind of get to know you a little bit better. Yeah. And you provided kind of a bio for me to prepare myself for the conversation. You grew up in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking a lot about photography.
Yes.
And you mentioned that it wasn't until kind of your senior year that you discovered this passion for photography.
Yeah. Throughout all of high school, I actually wanted to go into biology.
Really?
Yeah. And I was set on genetic engineering, which now thinking back, I'm like, that's crazy. What? And it was my senior year of high school. I waited to do all my art credits senior year because I'm like, why would I need? Why do I want to do that? And I took my first photography class. And at the time, I was following a few photographers, fine art photography on Instagram, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you could do that with photography. And I took that class, and it was really exciting just being able to see it as an art form and not just taking pictures of these random things. That was really fun. And yeah, from there it just kind of went on. I ended up graduating, being like, okay, I want to go to school for this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it became a passion. Yeah.
That's super cool. That's sick. Do you feel like you were a creative person before that? Did you have outlets to express yourself creatively, would you say?
Not really. Now looking back, there were whispers.
Yeah.
They're little whispers that the universe or something was just whispering in my ear, you're creative. This is your path. But I never really picked up on those until that year. But I like creating things. I like art. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a mechanical engineer because I wanted to invent things and, build machines. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely, looking back, I could see that there was some creativity. And there was always that childlike creative view on the world that I had. So yeah, it would come and go, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think it's cool you kind of mentioned it already and you put it in your bio, which I found really interesting, was you consider yourself an artist over a photographer. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you personally?
Yeah, I think I love creating, and I just happened to pick up a camera. Mm-hmm. If I learned how to paint, I would be a painter. If I learned how to make music, I'd make music. And I'm really open to still adapting my creative energy and seeing where that takes me. But right now, it's focused on photography just because I've built my life around that, and that has been my outlet for so long. But I I can see that growing into something else. I'm just, following that excitement and seeing where it takes me.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's kind of my like personal outlook on life, and kind of one of the goals with the podcast is I feel like creating can be found in so many different ways. Yeah. Like there's the traditional way of like, photography, videography, painting, singing. Mm-hmm. But I also think about like my brother, he's a computer science major, and he's mm-hmm. like coding and like creating websites, and like that in and of itself is also creation.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really cool. Like photography is what you're doing now, but who knows what you'll be doing later.
Yeah. I think the act of taking something from an idea and making it physical, that's creation, and that's art, and that's creativity showing itself in the physical world.
100%. So you take this photography class, senior mm-hmm. year, it ends. What's the next step? Do you buy a camera?
Yeah, so I got a camera for Christmas.
Okay.
That year, and before that, I was just taking photos on my phone. It was during COVID, so it was a weird class dynamic. And I got a camera, started taking pictures on that, and it was a completely different style from what I have now, from what I'm doing now. I was doing portraits and really like that fine art setup, lighting and everything. And then from there, I didn't want it to become just another hobby of mine that I just kind of get bored of and drop and then mm-hmm. find something else. So I was like, I really need to commit to this. I need to go to school or make a drastic change. And that was moving to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, right after graduating high school. And yeah, that's really what happened after that class ended. Yeah.
What was your starter camera, just out of curiosity?
I actually still have it.
Really?
I'm still using it. It's just a Nikon D3500.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I keep it. I am looking for an upgrade. I need an upgrade, but I keep it because also it's not about the equipment. This is you can go pick it up at Best Buy, pretty cheap camera mm-hmm.
Compared
to others. It's really not about the equipment. It's about how you use it and how you see what you want to capture and being authentic to yourself.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. That's something that I always try and keep in mind with, this podcast. I don't have all the shiny, crazy equipment. I have what I need, which is great.
Yeah.
And I'm super grateful that I, have the resources I need. But I just feel like the more I become more like media literate, as I'm like trying to understand media, why content is coming to me, what the person making is trying to, persuade me to do or share with me, mm-hmm. whatever it is, I realize that the most important piece of any form of media is not necessarily the quality, but the message behind it.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's the same thing, with the podcast. I try to have intriguing guests with intriguing stories and, have it be captivating, present in an effective way. And that's more important than if I had all the technology or equipment that I would ever need.
Yeah.
And I feel like that sounds true for photography as well.
No, yeah, for sure. I think any art form, whether you're a painter, you draw, it's not about the equipment. It's about what you're doing with it and how creative you can get with what you have. Because I think there is freedom in limitation.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really about the artist. Yeah.
100%. With that said, however, do you feel like there's like a camera out now for someone that's like looking to start photography? They're like, oh yeah, that's like the go-to to start.
I am not.
Is that a loaded question?
I'm not a big tech guy.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you. I am not a big tech guy. Like, I feel like a lot of photographers, this is also another thing that I think goes into equipment and that conversation. A lot of photographers will focus on the tech and this sensor and this lens and you can get this and this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's good to a certain point to know what you're using and know your gear, but you can get so obsessed with that you forget why you started. And if it is all about gear, like that's perfectly fine. If that's what you want it to be, that's what it is, and that's okay. but I try not to focus on gear and what I have because, again, I'm limited with what I have, and I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm more focused on the storytelling and doing what I want to do. Whereas, it's really easy to get caught up on that gear stuff. And to answer your question, I couldn't tell you because I don't know anything about cameras.
Yeah, no worries. But it's the why over the gear is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So what is your why behind photography, would you say?
I want to tell stories. Right now I'm doing street photography. It's all black and white, and I want to, my goal is to inspire others to build a practice in which they can see the beauty in the mundane in everyday life. For me, it's, getting up and walking around the city for a couple hours just with my camera. That's how I notice the beauty in everybody's story and everybody that's interacting with the world and light and buildings. My why and my goal is to inspire others and to just see the beauty, just acknowledge that there is beauty in every moment. And
that's awesome. That's a really powerful why. So you end up in San Francisco out of high school. Tell me a little bit about your experience. It was at the Academy of Art, correct?
Yeah.
Tell me about your time there and also just being in the San Francisco environment.
Oh man, where do I start? It was hard at first, being away from family. I was 18, 19, around there. I was a kid. I still am. But, I knew nothing about living alone. I could barely feed myself. And here I was in a brand new big city. But I was excited. Everything was new. And I was excited to go to school and be surrounded by like-minded people. So that was what was like pushing me through that first getting there and settling in, is that idea. And I started off like maybe the first week just walking around the city, getting used to where I was living. I was living like right middle of downtown, so there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, what's the goal here? What's happening? And what am I going to do? Obviously, it was for school at the time, so that had started, and the classes were going fine. They were amazing. And like I said, being around like-minded individuals that enjoyed art and also enjoyed photography, that helped me a lot, and it helped me push through that scared feeling that I was feeling at the time. I think being in San Francisco is really what led me to go into street photography, because everything was so new. It was like I was the only one that was like looking around. Everybody was just locked in. They were doing what they needed to do from point A to point B, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So I took my camera out and just started documenting everything, and capturing what was going on, what people weren't noticing. From there, I had this class. It was just the intro to photography class, and the professor, I could have opted out of the class. I could have taken the test to get out, but I was like, I can learn something new here. And it was probably the best class I've ever taken. The professor was really insightful, and he taught me a lot, and he was very helpful with what I was going through, and I was able to go to him and just tell him everything that was going on, how I was feeling, just not just as a photographer, as a student, but just as a human living alone for the first time. And on the last day of that class, I asked him, like, I need more. I like your class and I want to, like, give me some advice. How do I make it? How do I get more out of this? And he told me, you're really good at noticing and taking what you need from things you enjoy, which is what he noticed through my assignments and what I was doing in class. So he told me to embrace that and find inspirations and steal, copy. Basically, I was a good copier. So he told me that, and that's what I did. I not only photographers, I looked at paintings, I looked at drawings and just the world around me, and took little things of everybody that I met and every photographer that I came across on Instagram, through books, and slowly that became who I was. All these little pieces of everyone who I was exposed to is who I became as a photographer. And that's how I developed my style that I have now.
That's really cool. And explain a little bit about your style. You said like the black and white. How else would you describe kind of your personal style?
Black and white, high contrast. I like to play with light and shadow. I think that's the main subject in my photos, is light and shadow, and then how humans are interacting within that. Because oftentimes it's not noticed how we're interacting within the sunlight, or we're not noticing these weird shadows on the floor. And yeah, I'd say that's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when do you feel like, things kind of started, like momentum started to build? Was that kind of during your time in this class? Was it afterwards? Was it before?
I definitely think it was after that class. I think that class, the first half of San Francisco, it was sort of like discovering who I am just as a person, because I think it's important to know who you are as a person before you establish who you are as an artist. So then after that class, I was building who I was as an artist and what I want to say, what I want to do with the work that I am doing. And I found my style, by taking little things of everyone else. I found my style and I made it authentic. It felt right. It felt right to me and I loved it. I would spend like 5 hours max a day just out on the streets walking around.
That's crazy.
Wouldn't even take care of myself. I was obsessed, but I was passionate and I loved every second of it. And that's when I started meeting other photographers in the community, and really amazing people and really great photographers that I didn't feel like I belonged there, because they were just so good. I could never compare. But they were really helpful, and one of them, his name Juan, Sostre Shots on Instagram, if you want to check him out. He runs a magazine and he was doing submissions, so I applied and I got some photos in there, and I was like, that's so cool. And there were just these little accomplishments that kept pushing me to do better and find more. But yeah, when I noticed that the ball started rolling was when I started making these connections and being able to bounce ideas off of other photographers in the space. And then knowing I would meet photographers and they're like, oh yeah, I've seen your work, and I'm like, whoa,
that's awesome.
That's awesome. People that I looked up to, and introducing myself, and they knew who I was. That was mind-blowing to me, and I was like, wow. And I was just so grateful for everything, for myself and for everyone that I met, that I was able to get inspired from, I guess. Get inspiration from. But that was when I was like, okay, this might work.
Yeah.
And I just kept going. But
no, I think that's a huge thing, is just keep putting one foot in front of the other and the things that you're passionate about. And a lot of times your work just goes unnoticed, but you know, those little accomplishments just mean the world to someone that's just getting started, I feel like. Tell me a little bit about the photography community. So how did you start meeting these people? Was it mainly through social media, or how did you meet? Was it Juan that you said?
Yeah, Juan. How did we meet? It was through that magazine that we met. He made that post. I knew he was based in the Bay Area. And, you know, I was following. I took a lot of inspiration from him. So I was keeping up with what he was doing, and I thought the magazine was cool. So I submitted that, I got in, and then at that point we hadn't like met in person. Mm-hmm. I think it was just text through Instagram. And then from there was a Chinese New Year's parade. And I was like running home from work because it was happening as I was getting home. I ran home, grabbed my camera, ran back out. It was pouring rain, and I saw him, and I went up to him and I was like, "Hey." It's me. And it was just so cool. Just seeing like at that point, and still one of my big inspirations, meeting him and being like, oh, it's so cool, and feeling like we're at the same level. He's just such a nice person, and I'm really grateful for him. And then from there he, you know, introduced me to other people that were also inspirations to me. Mm-hmm. A black and white photographer, his name's Patrick. While I was out there, one of my biggest inspirations, and still to this day a big inspiration of mine. And he recognized my work, and that was really cool. From there I started being like, okay, I can do this, and I can get out more, and you know, apply to more things, see where I can get little like group exhibitions, and mm-hmm. slowly getting that.
Hey, do you remember where you left off more or less? We talked about Juan and then the other black and white photographer that inspired you.
Yeah, and I was applying to group exhibitions.
That's what it was. Yeah. There we are.
Okay, so I started doing that, applying myself more and getting out there more. And this was towards the end of my time in San Francisco. So I didn't get much experience in that, other than a few group exhibitions, which were really fun, just still communicating. And it felt just as I was starting to build that community and make these friends out there, I had to leave and move back.
Gotcha.
And when I did move back, I was scared because I didn't know what was out here for me. Mm-hmm. And it was just so exciting out there that I was like, I'm never going to find this back home. Yeah. Because, you know, it's like, it's what I'm used to. I know this city so well that it's like, where am I going to find?
And you've kind of built up like your photography like status and the community, and had showings and stuff like that. So I imagine it was hard to leave. Yeah, it was really hard to leave.
It was amazing out there, and I'm still so grateful for that experience. Without it, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be who I am. But yeah, leaving was really hard just because it felt like I was going to start from zero again. Yeah. And for a while, I stopped doing photography for a few months. And I actually it was like this hole inside of me that needed to be satisfied. So I started painting. Yeah. Nothing came out of that. It was just for fun. I just needed to do something creative, and I started painting. I started drawing, journaling. And it was like a whole new wave of rediscovery, because it felt like I was alone again. I had no community here. It was, you know, my friends and family, but mm-hmm. they're not really artists or photographers, so it wasn't that photography and art community up until this showing here in Salt Lake. It was called the One Shot to Rule Them All, which was like a little competition for local photographers. And
Gotcha.
And I applied. I got into the show, which was really fun and really cool, and that like opened a whole new world to me. And I realized that there is a community here, and we just gotta come together because they're all here. It's just not as prevalent, I guess, as it is over there. And after that, things really started rolling. We kind of got together, and Dario, D Film Studios on Instagram, shout out to him. He created a group called the SLC Photo Community on Instagram, and created a group chat and started doing photo walks for the community. And
which is what?
Oh, photo walk, where we get together, just walk around the city or walk around a certain location.
Oh, cool.
And just take photos. Just to meet people, connect, and have fun. Photographers.
How big are these groups typically?
I want to say around 20-ish people.
Cool.
Yeah. Since then, he's done one almost every month since, I want to say, I don't know, December-ish. Around there, winter time of last year. And yeah, those have been really fun. And then I started finding the community here and slowly getting back into photography and realizing that this is still what I want to do. And I still have a really strong passion for this. And there it was again, the train started going again, and I got that excitement from it that I once had back there. And yeah, from there, time passed. I started developing a series from my work, which is now finished, gladly. And yeah, it's been great so far, my time here.
What is it called, the series?
It's called Diminutia.
Okay.
It comes from the word diminution. And it's about the feeling, how easy it is to feel small and insignificant in this fast-growing world and just fast-moving world. So a lot of the photos in the series will be either like silhouettes of humans against towering buildings, or using light to evoke that same feeling, or powerful backgrounds that also evoke that same feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And I bet you feel a huge sense of accomplishment after finishing a project like that.
Yeah, it was hard to call it quits.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, this is done. But lately I've been kind of taking a break from photography, just taking it a lot more slow, just to see like, okay, again, who am I? Yeah. I feel like I've kind of lost myself for a while of like who I am and who I wanted to be. And now with that rediscovery of like, this is why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to tell stories. I'm doing this to inspire and to, evoke feeling. That's when it felt authentic again. And I looked through all my photos that I've ever taken. I'm like, okay, this is a series and this is complete. I am satisfied and this feels authentic to me. Because for some time, I think it felt like I was serving an audience. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, what are my Instagram followers gonna like?
Yeah.
What's gonna get me into more magazines? What's gonna get me into more galleries and exhibitions? Where the authenticity kind of fell off, and that took over, and it was just a complete disservice to the work and to my creativity. So once I started looking more into that and rediscovering why I'm doing this, that's when I was like, this is it. I have a series and it's complete, and I'm excited again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. It reminds me of one of my favorite artists, Mac Miller.
Okay, yeah.
He kind of talks about his, musical journey, and it's musical and personal life. It's all synonymous. It's all one. He's producing himself in his work. And kind of you talking about your own projects is kind of like his albums is like he's putting out where he's at this point in time. And sometimes he gets out of the project and knows exactly what's next. But I remember at least kind of going into, I think it was Swimming, his second to last album that he released. He was like, I don't know. Like, I need to take a time to like step back and discover who I am, where I'm at, and what kind of work I want to be putting out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really profound thought for people creating is like, and I just did it for the podcast. I just rebranded it from the Wilson Seneca podcast to Content to make sure that I'm putting out the most authentic content I can be that's true to myself and most beneficial to the people that are going to be intaking my content. Sorry.
There you go.
Cool. We were talking about Mac Miller.
Yeah,
Mac Miller, dude.
I had to take a break.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's true. I think like there's a lot of pressure, especially like today with like social media. And I was actually talking about this on my last episode. One of my friends, he has his own local clothing brand and like blew up on Visco of all things, which I imagine you're on Visco as well.
I'm not.
Really?
No.
Is there a reason for that? You're just not on it, or do you dislike Visco?
I don't I've never tried it.
I didn't know if there was like a dislike among the photography community of like Visco or something.
Oh no, I've never heard anything negative about it.
Anyway.
I just haven't tried it.
But he was like, it's sick. Like I have a bunch of following on Visco and I can post once every 6 months if I want, and there's no pressure. But like, I feel like on social media, like when you gain more followers, get more of a following, you feel like kind of responsibility to be producing content on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And I think those breaks where you're kind of reassessing, okay, what have I done? Who am I now? Where do I want to be going? Is something that's really profound and important in an artist's journey.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think you should, as an artist, as a creative, they should be taking more time to do that than maybe focusing on advertising on social media, because if you're not coming at it authentically, what is the point? Because when you're creating something, it's for the reason that it chose you, like this idea, it chose you and you are the one to bring it to life. So give it the time it deserves and give it the energy it deserves without the influence of any external forces like social media or the pressure of others and an audience, basically. Yeah.
I think that's really powerful, and I hope it's something that you'll keep, and I'll definitely strive to keep. And I think it's a lot more prevalent, that outlook on creation, among smaller people like us. Like, we're trying to get our name out there. Yeah. The bigger up you get, the more that pressure kind of builds on you because of businesses, of people above you, of all those things that we talked about, the pressure of social media. But I feel like if you can maintain that genuine, I'm creating this because, it's my calling, it's what came to me, and I'm the person to kind of bring these ideas to life, and to have that just respect for the audience and people receiving your content, to just like make sure that the right motivations are going behind it. Yeah.
Also having respect for the idea itself.
Yeah.
Because that, I think that is bigger than us. Ideas and creativity, it's bigger than the human experience. It is an entity of its own, and I'm in service to the creative, whatever it is. I'm just the conduit in which it expresses itself in this physical world. And yeah,
that's really cool. Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, So you came back to Salt Lake City after kind of, was it a year in San Francisco? How long were you out there for?
Almost 2 years.
2 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Aside from kind of, you mentioned that Salt Lake City is kind of a smaller photography community. Do you feel like there's other things that you noticed through your kind of photography lens that differs between San Francisco and Salt Lake City that was significant to you personally?
Yeah. So in San Francisco, I was doing a lot more like in your face shots. I would hold the camera like up here, walk like right in front of a person and
just take it.
Yeah, just take it. Sometimes with a flash. Like,
would you ask them first or just go for it?
Just go for it, because that's what I saw people were doing out there, and I was like, it works. Let me try it. I wasn't as in their face as other people.
Yeah.
So I would try to be discreet about it and not like disturb them, because when someone sees the camera, everything.
No, it's true.
Yeah. But I could not do that out here. That would not, like downtown Salt Lake. I would get punched. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did
that never happen in San Francisco? They were just used to it?
I don't think it was that they were used to it. I just noticed that no one cared. They were all just they just need to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
They don't have time to be like, what'd you take? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's what I found so strange, is that I'm like, what's going on? Why is no one looking around and noticing? Like, I just took a picture of you, like, up in your face, like, you're just continuing. And I'm like, okay, let me. And it was never to, like, violate anyone's space. It was never to do harm. I never did it with those intentions. It was capturing these characters almost on the street that would have just been looked over by anyone else, where I see a story behind them. I see this beauty of another life and a whole different universe within that person. And the fact that I will never see that person again, they will never see me, and there's a chance that they will never see that photo. That mystery, I think, is what kept me doing that type of photography.
Yeah.
But yeah, since I moved back, it completely switched to more of like what I do now, that light and shadow and interplay of humanity. It switched to that because that felt a lot more authentic. Because even back then I was like, that's what's selling, that's what's popular here. Let me ride that train, hop on that and see where I can get. Where now this feels a lot more authentic to me and what I want to do. So yeah, that was a difference. That it's pretty taboo to see someone with a camera out on the street. It's always like, what are you doing with that? Like, what's going on? Even on our photo walks, when we're with a group with a bunch of cameras, we'll get asked like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. Like,
is there a famous person? Like, are you guys paparazzi? And we're like, no, we're just having fun. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, what? Okay. and yeah, that's, I think sorry, lost my train of thought.
No worries. Take your time.
Yeah, I guess just having the camera out might feel a lot more intimidating here, because a lot more people are noticing here. They're aware of their surroundings because it's slower paced.
Yeah.
A lot more slower paced in San Francisco. So people are noticing, and I also found that I take it slower here. Where in San Francisco, I would almost like run around, like, speed walk, take a picture, next.
Yeah.
Where here, I'm like, I'm just going on a walk with my camera just on my shoulder. And then when I see a moment that I want to capture, I take a photo, might stay there for a second, wait for someone, like the right person to walk by, and then take it. And I like this this saying that someone said, I forgot where, but it was like, it feels more like fishing than hunting. So back in San Francisco, I was hunting. Now I'm fishing. I'm being more patient. I'm being more aware of my surroundings and light, and just being present, I guess. Yeah, is the big thing. And yeah, that's, I'd say, the main differences.
Cool. That's awesome. So you're here now. You're going to school.
Mm-hmm.
You're studying. You explained to me when my friend was in that you're doing multidisciplinary design.
Yes.
In psychology, correct?
And psychology.
So where do you see yourself? What kind of direction are you hoping to take your personal and creative journey?
So right now I see photography as my way of exploring creativity and just that world, that universe. And for school, I'm aiming to be a creative director, or just be in a space full of people that are passionate about what they're doing. Because I think I have a passion for passionate people, and I love being surrounded by, I think that's why I love being surrounded by other artists and other creatives, because you can feel that passion, and it's inspiring, just being around them and hearing them speak. So I call it like a creative counselor, just help guide people through this labyrinth of creativity, because it takes a lot, I think, and it takes a lot of courage to make something, and to go through the process of making something physical from an idea. That takes a lot of courage, and it takes even more courage to share it with the world.
Yeah.
Because once it's out there, it's out of your control, and that could take a toll on anyone, really. So yeah, that's my goal for school. And there's like two separate entities. I feel like my photography is my journey through the labyrinth, and then school is more to get into a space where I can get into a space and gain the knowledge that I need to help others, also help myself, get through this field of creativity.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and I've never really thought about that. But I feel like every creative person needs kind of that mentor to kind of guide them through that process. And it's honestly kind of a shame, because you look at, you go through Reels or YouTube or whatever, and you see the best content. And that leads to a lot of people being afraid to put out their stuff, because I feel like regardless of the discipline, whether it's photography, podcasts, you're making a website like my brother, your first couple go arounds are going to be terrible. It's just making and incremental improvements until you get to the point where okay, this feels good. But, I look at even my last podcast, I'm like, I can do better than that. That's not my best work. In my first podcast, I'm like, how did I ever even put that out? That's crazy. But I think that's, my biggest piece of advice to people that are wanting to start and, have that creative, I feel like everyone has that creative, desire to just make stuff. Is to just start, whether you're posting it or not, just with every time that you're putting forth action, you're learning something. Yeah. And that's been my biggest thing that I've learned as been going through the podcast, is I'm making mistakes, but I'm learning every single time that I'm putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah.
I think my biggest, something that I tell a lot of people is to follow that excitement. Like you said, whether you're posting it, whether you're sharing it or not, keep following that excitement, because that is the whisper that I once, that is the whisper of this is what you need to do. Follow the excitement, and at some point you'll get so lost in the flow and the excitement, that at some point you realize that you have a product that now you want to share it with the world. And that is what makes good art, because it's authentic and it speaks and it's finished when when you realize that this is yours and this was like, it feels like a part of you when you do that, when you follow that process.
Yeah, no, 100%. Believe it or not, we're nearing the end of the podcast. Okay. Something that I like to do at the end is give the person being interviewed just an opportunity to share whatever, whether it's something you came today wanting to share, something that we didn't touch on, something I did touch on, but you didn't go deep enough that you would have wanted to. Just super open-ended, however you kind of want to end this episode.
I think like I just said, I think just follow the excitement. Do what you love, whether it's to make money or not. Do what you love, do what you want to do, and by doing that, maybe you'll get something that you can make money off of, but that's not the point. The point is to create, and to create authentically without judgment from yourself. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Miguel, for making the trip down to Provo.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time and the thoughts shared. I love this conversation, and, wish you the best of luck in your school and photography journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This was amazing.
Yeah, 100%.